Before the naturalist and the supernaturalist can begin to discuss their difference of opinion, they must surely have an agreed-upon definition both of nature and of supernature. But unfortunately, it's almost impossible to get such a definition, just because the naturalist thinks that nothing but nature exists. The word nature means to him everything, or the whole show, or whatever there is. And if that is what we mean by nature, then of course nothing else exists. The real question between him and the supernaturalist has evaded us. Some philosophers have defined nature as what we perceive with our five senses, but this also is unsatisfactory, for we do not perceive our own emotions in that way. And yet they are presumably natural events. In order to avoid this deadlock and to discover what the naturalist and the supernaturalist are really dithering about, we must approach our problem in a more roundabout way. And then he talks about the natural state, and he has 5 definitions. In all of these examples, nature means... I begin by considering the following sentences. Are those his natural teeth or a set? The dog in his natural state is covered with fleas. I love to get away from tilled land and metalled roads and be alone with nature. Do be natural. Why are you so affected? It may have been wrong to kiss her, but it was very natural. A common thread of meaning in all of these usages can easily be discovered. The natural teeth are those which grow in the mouth. We do not have to design them, make them, or fit them. The dog's natural state is the one he will be in if no one takes soap and water and prevents it. The countryside where nature reigns supreme is the one where soil, weather, and vegetation produce their results unhelped and unimpeded by man. Natural behavior is the behavior which people would exhibit if they were not at pains to alter it. The natural kiss is the kiss which will be given if moral or prudential considerations do not intervene. In all the examples, nature means what happens of itself or of its own accord. What you do not need to labor for, what you get if you take no measure to stop it. The Greek word for nature, physis, is connected with the Greek verb to grow. Latin natura is the verb to be born. The natural is what springs up or what comes forth or what arrives and what goes on. From this account, the given, what is there already, the spontaneous, the unintended, the unsolicited. What the naturalist believes is that the ultimate fact, capital F, the thing you can't go behind, is a vast process of space and time which is going on of its own accord. Inside that total system, every particular event, such as you're sitting reading this book or listening to me on a podcast, happens because some other event has happened. This is the cause and effect Sam was just talking about.
My argument is that any statement of causality, a deterministic universe, these causes of necessity precede.
Each particular thing, such as this page, is what it is because other things are what they are. And so, eventually, because the whole system is what it is, all the things and events are so completely interlocked that no one of them can claim the slightest independence from the whole show. None of them exists on its own and goes on of its own accord, except in the sense that it exists at some particular place and time. That general existence on its own or behavior of its own accord, which belongs to nature, the great total interlocked event as a whole. Thus, no thoroughgoing naturalist believes in free will, for free will would mean that human beings have the power of independent action. The power of doing something more or other than what was involved in the total series of events. And any such separate power of originating events is what the naturalist denies. Spontaneity, originality, action on its own is a privilege reserved for the whole show, which he calls nature. This is exactly what Sam Harris here is talking about.
As I said, you can't rule it out completely. It could be that the whole thing, frankly, it could be that we exist inside a deterministic computer in which somebody had a purpose in getting us to have this conversation and feel some way within it. And, all sorts of things have to be left formally on the map. But I think at a practical level, there's no percentage in it. If this really is a totally deterministic universe, then it's hard to even know how to complete that sentence, the level of pointlessness of anything.
Here's the strange thing about us. All of this stuff seems very theoretical, but it seems to count deep down inside that even if you're living with this implicit frame switching all the time, even if you say things like, well, deep down, there is no free will, choice is an illusion, yada, 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 but seize the day. What you believe deep down eventually matters. If you live in the midst of all of this nihilism, just keep saying and just keep saying and just keep saying, that stuff is going to seep down and it's going to become your water table, and it's going to yield a harvest of nihilism. What Sam Harris is doing here is sowing nihilism. He says fundamentally, we're locked into this. We're watching a movie. You can decide how you feel about the movie, and it's like, wait a minute. That makes no sense given what you said base reality truly is. And Lewis picks up on this. The important point to notice is that moral judgments raise the same sort of difficulty for naturalism as any other thoughts. What discredits particular moral judgments must equally discredit moral judgment as a whole. If the fact that men have such ideas as ought and ought not at all can be fully explained by irrational and non-moral causes, this great line of causation that Sam Harris just asserted all the way back to the Big Bang, then those ideas are all an illusion. But if naturalism is true, I ought is the same sort of statement as I itch or I'm going to be sick. In real life, when men say I ought, we may reply, well, yes, you are right. But in a world of naturalists, the only sensible reply would be, oh, are you? Because there's only is. Such a doctrine, I have admitted, is not flatly self-contradictory, which is exactly what Brett Weinstein has said. The naturalist can, if he chooses, brazen it out. He can say, yes, I quite agree that there is no such thing as right and wrong. I admit that no moral judgment can be true or correct, and consequently that no one system of morality can be better or worse than another. All ideas of good and evil are hallucinations, shadows cast on the outer world by the impulses which we have been conditioned to feel. Indeed, many naturalists are delighted to say this, but then they must stick to it. And fortunately, though inconsistently, most real naturalists do not. In a moment after they have admitted that good and evil are illusions, you will find them exhorting us to work for posterity, to educate, to revolutionize, to liquidate, to live and die for the good of the human race. The naturalist, like Mr. H.G. Wells, spends a long life doing with passionate eloquence and zeal. But surely this is very odd. And this is exactly the point that Brett Weinstein keeps making to Sam Harris.
I have to say, inside of a completely deterministic universe, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean consequence? It's
but that's
it's so fully automatic.
Well, yes, but it is on some level we're at Zeno by another route, because
yes,
in a fully it's just a single object.
Right.
There's no such thing as events. There's no such thing.
It's just a single object. There's no such thing as events. Oh, his hand doesn't quite reach. Poor fella.